They may make $2,200, $2,300 with you being a co-host, and then you get to profit, let's just say anywhere from $700 to $1,000 per month profit for managing it for them on Airbnb and these other short-term rental sites. Now, the biggest benefit is that the landlord is responsible for all costs.
You can start with a property that's already furnished. You can also get the landlord to furnish the property for you to then list it on Airbnb. I mean, basically all you have to do is sell them on the idea of listing it as a short-term rental, and they actually will make more money than they would with a normal tenant.
There's not a single dollar out of your pocket that's going into this deal, so it's impossible to lose money, and you can pretty much only profit from day one.
All right, welcome to Airpreneur, where we talk about how we scaled our own Airbnb portfolio to 7 figures over the last 2 years and achieved complete financial freedom. I'm Vince.
I'm Adam.
And today's topic is co-hosting, right? So to kick things off, Adam, what is co-hosting for the listener who's heard of like arbitrage or co-hosting or buying short-term rentals?
So co-hosting is perhaps the easiest way to actually get started with short-term rentals. So with the traditional short-term rental, you have to pay for furniture, right? That's cost is coming out of your pocket. You rent the place and you have to pay for furniture to fill it. With co-hosting, there's actually zero expenses. So essentially, you almost partner with a landlord. So a landlord owns a house, right? Now, you'll partner with the landlord to run the house for them on Airbnb as a co-host. In exchange, you get a percentage of the profits. Now, the money that the landlord's going to be making is actually higher than they would have made from the rent they were going to charge for a long-term tenant. So if they were going to charge $1,800 for a long-term tenant, they may make $2,200, $2,300 with you being a co-host, and then you get to profit, let's just say anywhere from $700 to $1,000 per month profit for managing it for them on Airbnb and these other short-term rental sites. Now, the biggest benefit is that the landlord is responsible for all costs. So they're responsible for utilities, they're responsible for all the furniture, etc. Basically, you'll give them a budget, let's just say $10,000, and you'll go still furnish it for them, get the designs, get all of that. We get some 3D renderings we have our students do, things like that. So you still make the investment passive for them because you run the entire process. However, there's not a single dollar out of your pocket that's going into this deal. So it's impossible to lose money, and you can pretty much only profit from day one. So if you're somebody who doesn't have a lot of money to start, or maybe their personal credit isn't so good, co-hosting is a great way to actually build up traction, save money to then reinvest into bigger projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the cool thing about co-hosting is you can start with a property that's already furnished. You can also get the landlord to furnish the property for you to then list it on Airbnb. I mean, basically all you have to do is sell them on the idea of listing it as a short-term rental, and they actually will make more money than they would with a normal tenant.
If a place is furnished, it's actually the easiest to convince someone to be a co-host for them because they have to invest less money. Like if the place is 90% furnished, they may only have to invest $2,500 to $3,000 into the property for you to get it up and running, and that includes things like extra linens and towels, some additional artwork, maybe some new furniture or things that are making the unit stand apart, paying for photography, paying for a deep clean. All of this probably won't cost more than $2,500, $3,000. So that means for them, they're going to make their money back on that very quickly and then actually profit longer. So this is a longer term arrangement. Typically how we recommend our students to do it is you do a co-hosting contract where you co-host for them for a minimum of 6 months. And then after that, it's month to month because it's going to take 6 months for them to actually get the maximum benefit. Most likely after the 6 months, if you're fulfilling your end of the bargain, they're not going to leave. They're not going to want to end it. If anything, they're probably going to want to give you more properties, which is what's happened to us multiple times.
Yeah. So, I mean, like to compare, because this leads to my next question, which is like to compare it to the arbitrage model, right? There's the arbitrage model means I'm going to lease the property and then I will pay for the furniture, right? So that's on me, whether it's 10K, 15K, whatever. Now, like we can talk about like how we would pay for that. I would never pay out of my pocket for that, right? We never did that. But the point is that expense falls on me and my business model. Whereas with co-hosting, that expense is on the landlord, but they are collecting most of the profits. So like if the target property in question will produce $5,000 a month on Airbnb, with arbitrage, I'm going to pay that $2K in rent. I'm going to pay all the expenses of the cleaners and all that stuff, and then I'll profit whatever's left. So in co-hosting, I'm basically going to give a majority of that $5K to the landlord, and I'm just going to collect a percentage, right? So instead of me collecting everything over rent, I just might get an agreed upon 15%, and then that $1,500, or not $1,500, $750 goes to me. So the pros and the con, like versus Airbnb arbitrage and co-hosting, right? Like, so somebody who's totally new to Airbnb and they're like, okay, what route should I go? right? I would probably say those who are limited on capital or have bad credit, like you said, which means they won't have the ability to get that funding to get, that business credit card to then buy all the furniture, all that stuff. Co-hosting is a really low risk option. You don't have to sign any leases. It's just a property management agreement, and anyone can rip it up if they didn't feel like it was working out in their favor. But, what other pros and cons versus arbitrage can you think of?
Well, I think a pro is obviously going to be low risk. So it's impossible to lose money. So if you're somebody who's like really afraid of losing money in real estate and you want the safest possible way to still make cash flow, then co-hosting is going to be that. However, a con is it's harder to scale. It's harder to find these deals. It takes longer to get good at persuading the landlords to work with you and understanding how to present that. There's literally a presentation we do to make sure the landlord understands the process. That takes time, right? So you're not going to, if you're trying to scale as fast as possible to, let's say, $10,000 a month, right? You want to quit your job, you need $10,000 a month. Co-hosting is going to be a slower route.
Yeah.
It's going to take you time and it's going to take longer to find those deals to get them set up. However, the benefit is you could leverage those deals to land other deals that are arbitrage deals and reinvest the money you make from those co-hosting deals into still expanding without any risk of losing. Now,
100%.
for somebody more advanced who, by more advanced, I mean, let's just say they have more capital to work with out front. They have like 15, 20K, they have a good credit score. What I would recommend then is basically diversifying. So for every 3 to 4 arbitrage deals you get, getting a co-hosting deal so that during the slow seasons of the year where your arbitrage deals might not be doing as well, you still have that co-hosting deal that's continuing to bring in profits and just give you additional cash during that period. It can't hurt you to diversify in that way and understand how to do both models, not only arbitrage model, but the co-hosting model, because you can always pivot your conversation with the landlord to whatever one would make the most sense for the deal.
Yeah. So for the person, just to expound on that, the person who's coming into this on day one and they're like, I really want to take this to the moon, like 10, 20, 30K per month. The only way you're going to generate really high profits for yourself from a co-hosting perspective are high revenue properties, which are typically vacation rental markets, which are typically also very competitive because you're going up against experienced vacation rental management companies as well. I'm not saying it can't be done. We've done it. We've had students that have done it as well. But the thing is, if your ambition is to really generate like quote unquote financial freedom type income, with co-hosting, the ceiling is a little bit lower, right? Now, one other benefit though of co-hosting for somebody starting out is actually from a regulations perspective, because those markets, this is a creative way to actually attack those markets that have like the owner occupancy or like primary residence type restriction. This is not legal advice, full disclaimer, but the thing is, in markets where the owner of the property has to be the host of the short-term rental, you can now leave them on the Airbnb listing and you are listed as a co-host, allowing you to list a property that like the owner needs to be part of. So it's a great tactic for like those markets where like you don't really think that you have the ability to do arbitrage because the owner of the property needs to be on the listing. You can do that in a co-host type market. So it's actually more flexible from a regulations perspective than arbitrage. Yep. But again, if your objective is like purely fastest scaling to the highest amount of income, arbitrage usually has a higher, ceiling for that.
Yeah, for sure. I'll just end this with a story here. So our first deal that we got together when we partnered up was actually a co-hosting deal. And we got all the furniture in, ordered, designed, like it was all set up, ready to go. And then 3 days before we're supposed to start, the owner pulls the contract on us and says he's going to do it himself. And that is the biggest negative of co-hosting, is that because usually it is month to month, or before you actually start, they can cancel. They can pull out on you. Compared to if you have a lease with a building, they have to fulfill the lease terms that you have least got on the building. So if you did a 2-3 year lease, you at least know that you have that for 2 to 3 years. With co-hosting, especially the early on months, or if it doesn't go well at some point, like maybe there's some issues or whatnot, you don't know how to handle it, you do risk potentially losing the deal and having to find a new deal. So it's low risk to get in, but it's not necessarily the most sustainable in some cases. Now, three of our co-hosting deals, we just signed a contract for last week that re-ups us for an entire year that we signed in, because we already worked with them prior, so we just guaranteed another year with us. So it can be longer term, but you do have a risk of potentially losing a deal.
Yeah, there's not as much teeth in the deal as with arbitrage because you're signing a lease. So the last thing I'll say about this is, for those who are looking to get into co-hosting, one of the newer features out there on the Airbnb platform is actually to offer your co-hosting services to network with landlords, which is actually really cool. So it's even made the barrier of entry a little bit lower for folks that want to get into co-hosting. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you need a little bit of track record on the platform to use that feature. So folks who if you're going to land that very first co-hosting deal, make a little bit of money with that, you can then, if you're doing it for like 3 months or so, you can sign up for that new feature on Airbnb, and actually it will promote your co-hosting services to other property owners on the platform, which will allow you to expand.
Yeah.
But, just keep in mind that co-hosting from a cash flow perspective is going to be a little bit lower of a ceiling than compared with Airbnb arbitrage or, of course, buying the property or anything like that. So I guess, any other final thoughts on co-hosting?
No, it's just you have to go about it the same way you go about it for arbitrage. So you have to understand how to speak with the landlord. You have to understand how to do the market research. You have to understand how to present it to the landlord and negotiate. And then the operation side of running a co-hosting deal versus an arbitrage deal is the exact same. It's the exact same skills. It's the exact same software. It's the exact same team. So once you can do one, you can pretty much do the other as well.
Yep. Well, guys, co-hosting. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that. So if you are someone looking to create your own job-quitting Airbnb business and you want to scale it to 6 figures and beyond, then you're going to want to join our Facebook group. It's totally free, and all you have to do is tap the link below to join it at no cost. So we go live in there twice per week and to coach you on all of the latest insights, tools, and resources that we use to create our own business. So that way you could start earning your first few $1,000s a month on Airbnb.